Hey everybody, how's it going? So today we're going to get started fixing yet another bad MacBook. First thing we're going to do is just going to remove the COVID from this MacBook. MacBooks often have COVID all over them. Right. So the first thing you notice with this board, the airbags. 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 So let's see, what's this thing doing? I'm not going to plug in the battery because I don't want anything to do with that battery blowing up in my face. I heard it chime, and I see an Apple logo, but there's no backlight. So the problem with this machine is that it has no backlight. So the first thing I'm going to do is, what is the backlight voltage? What are we measuring here? The backlight voltage measured is 0 volts. Okay? Fair enough. Now the backlight fuse on this model is never going to go bad because it's a current sensing circuit. And as you can see, we've got a fine backlight fuse there. So let's unplug it. No power going through it. Do we have a short circuit? We do. 10 ohms to ground on backlight output. If I unplug the screen cable, we get 170,000 ohms, which means most likely this is a bad screen cable. So let's open this thing up and see if that is the case. I got to remove the hinge. No biggie. You can stick your tweezers in the battery cell to make it less puffy. You know what? I'll let you do that. How about you do that? You can do that in your house. You go for it and you tell me how that turns out for you. Okay, these two little rubber things over here. Now, remember, this has no light in the screen. So the first thing I did is check screen power, backlight output. That's usually on the schematic as PPV out, SO LCD backlit, or PPHV something LCD backlight. If you go to where the LCD connector is on the schematic, there's often going to be something that makes it very obvious that that's backlight. So, yeah, I'll open up the schematic for this one. This one's a 3787. So this is the LCD connector where the screen plugs in. And the first pin here, PPV out LCD backlight. And if I click that, it shows me all the places that backlight shows up. So here we have a capacitor, where we have ground on one side, and the LCD backlight output on the other. And over here you can see backlight fuse in the backlight circuit. F7700, that's what I measured before. Now we are going to do this. Just unplug the antenna. Now this is a difficult one to pull out, this webcam thing, because you can't really pull it out with your nail since there's barely any sticking out there to get it out by. So how are you going to remove that connector without breaking it out of the machine? See, this is a difficult one. This is a painful one. Most people, they pull and they rip the cable or the connector because the cable is not strong enough usually to support this. And of course, because I'm recording it and I'm trying to show you something, that's the one fucking time that it comes out easily. But it usually doesn't do that. So you can use one of these pry tools and do this. Or if you don't have a pry tool on you, you could use a T5 screwdriver. Just don't touch the board. And if you touch the board a little bit, it's not too terrible, but you don't want to scrape through layers of it. And do this, a little out on this side, a little out on that side, a little out there, and then you can pull the cable out. But yeah, there's a lot of people that rip that cable. And once you rip that cable, you're not getting a webcam ever again. Because you have to run that cable behind the screen, which you're going to have to break in order to get into, and it's very, very bad. It's just don't break that cable. So what you do is you don't remove the cable. And you don't need a spudger. You can use something else. It's not the end of the world if you use something else. It's only the end of the world if you fuck it up using something else. All right, so I'm going to take out those two little pieces over here. No contact tracing going on there. Now we got to get this stupid clutch cover off, which never wants to go back on properly after you remove it. Piece of shit. Come on, you fuck. There we go. I need a smaller Phillips. I brought home my smaller Phillips so that Erica could take apart her keyboard. But she hasn't taken apart her keyboard yet. This is the Wi-Fi antenna here. Gotta unscrew this thing. So many screws in this little bastard. The display cable has tape around it that goes around the antenna. This whole thing is a troll by design. By design, it's a total troll. And it wouldn't be an Apple product if they didn't put a screw under wires. Total pricks. Okay, Wi-Fi antenna's off. Alright, this is going to be interesting. So this is not going to be a screen cable necessarily, but it's not going to need a screen either. This may actually require refurbishing of the screen. Yeah, check that out. You see what I see? Now this is on the screen side. Look at the screen. The screen connector on the screen side itself is bad. Now the thing is, I want to try and reuse this screen. Why do I want to reuse this screen? So this screen used to be $85 to $90. Now the screen's not available at all. All you can buy is the entire top assembly with the Apple logo in the back and the metal container and the hinges and everything, and that's going to cost over $400. And even if you could replace the screen at $85, it's a really miserable thing to do. Replacing the screen on this is not easy at all. So I don't want to tell this customer they need a new screen because for some reason their control board died because Apple. What I'm going to try to do here is revive this as is. So the first thing I'm going to try and do is remove that screen connector. Now I used to have a soldering tip that was gigantic, and I'm going to see if I can find that and steal it because it's going to allow me to easily remove that without damaging it with hot air. The tip that I'm using here is a T15-1403. That's T15-1403. If I use hot air on this to try to get this LCD connector off, what's going to happen is if I heat this, I'm going to heat the ribbon cable under it, but more importantly, I'm going to destroy the screen. The screen does not like getting hit with 200 or 300 or 400 Celsius. It's not going to work. So this is the tip I'm going to use. Look at this thing. It's gigantic. Okay, so we do this, and we take the big tip. This is what I like about the HAKKO iron, is that you can get just about any tip for this thing. That's what I like about the FX951, is the availability of all these little things like this. It's awesome. So now we're going to turn the screen so that it's more comfortable for me to work. Remember, you don't want to station yourself around the screen's comfort. You want to have the device on the desk so that you're comfortable, which is actually kind of hard here because I'm right-handed. And it would make more sense if I was left-handed so that the screen would not be hitting me. Okay, so watch what we do here. We're going to kind of sweep this connector off of the board. Remember, we don't want to touch the screen at all. Also, everybody say hello to the flickering microscope camera light. I overvolted a really cheap microscope light because I'm a cheapskate after buying that polarizer filter. I didn't have enough light, so I overvolted it, and I'm sending like 14 or 15 or 16 volts to this microscope light, and let me tell you, it does not like that at all. It does not like that at all. So it's responding by flickering. And instead of do the right thing and just pay the $100-something bucks for a good microscope light, I'm just going to continue overvolting this one and giving myself a seizure. But it's kind of fun. I like it. All right. There we go. See? And the connector comes right off without having to use any hot air. Pretty cool, right? I got this tip for when I was doing BGA rework so that I could easily wick the entire area underneath a GPU without having to go, down it 20 different times. And it was pretty nice for that. But it also comes in handy for these situations, and not just wicking large BGA chip pads. So let's clean up the area. Alright, I gotta get myself an LCD connector. I'll be right back. Where could you buy an LCD connector if you wanted an LCD connector? I wonder where. If you wanted an LCD connector, where could you think of where you would be able to find that LCD connector at a reasonable price with same-day shipping? That's right, folks, same-day shipping. OMG. OMG. Same-day shipping? Yes, indeed. Where would you go if you wanted to find that? Where would you go? Think about it. If you were smart, where would you go? Store.rossmangroup.com, baby. Store.rossmangroup.com. That's where you go. What do you mean from TV monitor? I use an HDMI capture card to get the microscope camera as well as my camcorder and the overhead camera. Yeah. But I don't know what you mean by TV monitor. Alright, this is hard because you got this cable in the way. That's the actual backlight cable itself. Sabre, go away. Stop bitching. There is no reason to keep bitching. Shoo. I'm listening to music while fixing a board. Fuck off. Teacher or DJ, why are you playing music? I don't want to DJ. Yeah, multiple video sources is a capture card. I use this Magewell Quad HDMI capture card, but it's actually not a good deal anymore because Blackmagic came out with one that can do 4K and it's actually cheaper. This one can't. Then again, Blackmagic doesn't really work just out of the box the same way that the Magewell stuff does as easily. I used to have a Blackmagic card. First, it didn't accept my microscope input because they claimed that my microscope camera was a medical HDMI, not broadcast HDMI, and theirs was only compatible with broadcast HDMI, which sounded like the biggest load of shit I'd ever heard in my life. And also, it only worked if you set the exact frame rate of your device. So if my camera's outputting 59.94 frames per second and I set it to 60, I'd get black video. I don't know. It's too much of a pain in the ass. Leave the hinge screw. So Henry, if you want to do that, leave the hinge screws very loose, close it, line it up, then tighten the hinge screws, then open it. Then you have to disconnect the display assembly to put the clutch cover on. But that's how you make sure that the hinges are in the right are screwed into just the right spot. When did this connector become such a piece of shit? It seems like I have two different connectors. There's the motherboard connector, and then there's the display side connector. And the display side connector is really annoying to work with by contrast. What's the best MacBook to buy for the least amount of problems? I need to get one for work. I don't know, 2013 A1502 or A1466? But ultimately, don't buy a MacBook. Come on. The normal drag soldering technique I use doesn't want to work on this connector because the pins are so shitty it'll just break into pieces. Watch. See how easily they bend here? Like, these pins are made of shit. It's not like the LCD connector that goes to the board. That one's very, very strong and durable. It's really interesting because it's the same general connector. The only difference is that other one has those two little pegs under it. These pins are such shit. They bend so easily. This is not like the normal IPEX connector. And making matters worse, my microscope light is probably giving you all a nice seizure by now. All right. Make sure the pad is heated and the pin is heated. Make sure all these have a nice connection. I was honestly have been better off using the motherboard side connector, but just bending the pegs off of the bottom myself. Because the screen side connector is such a piece of shit by comparison. It's unbelievable. As you see, when I do my normal drag soldering, I'm just beating the crap out of that connector and it doesn't care. And this is like if I tap it wrong with a micro pencil, all the pins get bent. Hi is Hi's nickname. Right, and I'm not going to reuse that screen cable, obviously. So let's take the screen cable off. Okay, so we plug this in. And now we see if this actually works. Don't smoke. Oh, no smoke. Apple logo. Well, there you go. So there, what we did was we refurbished the screen itself rather than replace it. So we had a short to ground on our backlight line. And after we noticed the short to ground on the backlight line, I unplugged the screen. When I unplugged the screen, the short went away, which meant that the short had to have been inside the screen. So when I opened up the screen, I saw that where the cable for the screen connects, that it was burned. So replacing the cable would not have done any good, because as you were able to see, that the entire section was all burned. So you needed to separate the connector on the screen. Now, why wouldn't I just replace the screen? Because that screen that used to be $85 to $95, A, takes over an hour to replace and is absolutely miserable. But more importantly, B, that screen now costs over $400, because Apple. So there's not much I can do. If you look for an LP154WT1 SJE1, I used to get those for $85, and now they cost over $400. So replacing the screen on this would have been prohibitively expensive. Now, when someone says, but Lewis, I think it's just the cable. It's just the cable. And I respond with something that kind of crushes their hopes and dreams that this is going to be a $5 repair. Hopefully this video serves as evidence as to why. Opening this display assembly up is honestly easier than it was on older generations, where just to get to the screen cable, you had to remove a piece of glass that often broke. It's easier to get to the screen cable in here than it is on some of Apple's older designs, for sure, absolutely. But replacing the connector and all that stuff that burned when the cable burned and all that, it's not a 5-minute thing. But as you can see, it does work. We do get a backlight now and an image, and we didn't have to replace the entire display assembly. So while this is not a cheap $5 fix, this is definitely less than the $500 to $1,000 that a customer would have been charged had they gone to the Genius Bar. That's it for today. And as always, I hope you learned something. Thank you so much for watching. And if you want to buy a connector, anything like that, well, store.rossmangroup.com for life, baby. See you in the next video.